as I had stated, he made this decision that he was going to go on to Oxford to Merton College, and that was in 1914. Something big was happening in the world in 1914. And it was interesting because he was first visiting Marburg, Germany, where he planned to take a summer program. But the war broke out. So that kind of put the kibosh on Marburg. And his intention for going there was because Alan Fournier was teaching there. And remember, when he was in Paris, this was a gentleman that he had been following. So he decided, well, I'm going to start a little bit early at Merton, and he did. And the interesting thing, while he was a junior there, he proposed a motion that society abhors Americanization of anything, specifically the Americanization of Oxford. Interesting little tidbit. In that period of time between 1905 and 1915, Americans were, the affluent Americans, were not choosing to go on to Harvard, Yale, or Princeton. They were making decisions to go on to Oxford or Cambridge. And it was a cultural phenomenon, and there was a lot of recoil from the British Oxford students and the British Cambridge students.
Caused that exactly because we studied Robert Frost and William Carlos Williams, and they all did the same thing. They all went to Europe, and they were all kind of at the same time and in the same groups in Europe. But what caused that exodus?
What caused the exodus? Well, a couple of things caused the exodus. One was a fervency against industrialization, American industrialization, and that was more of a political plot. But the cultural plot was that there was a great deal of Francophiles and Anglophiles. And the best way to Anglophile oneself is to do what? Is to attend English university. And one of the best things to do to become a Francophile is to graduate from the French universities. Just as at that same period of time, women were marrying men with titles who didn't have a pot to piss in, but they had the title. And the Americans had the dough. So, I mean, it was a real, these were cultural balances. This proposal about the Americanization of Oxford, Eliot proposed this to the student body, and it actually lost by 2 votes. And it was 2 Englishmen who said, "Now, this is crazy." So, at this particular point in time, he was meeting even larger world-renowned gentlemen like Ezra Pound and Conrad Aiken and this crowd, and he was disappointed in his choice of Merton for some odd reason. He got caught up and was unsettled with his choice. And they had offered him a teaching position, full-time tenure, and he decided against it. So he decided that he was going to teach at the University of London, and that's where he stayed. Now, his doctoral dissertation was the knowledge and experience of the philosophy of F.H. Bradley. And what was interesting is that the board denied him and said that it was too aggressive and too anti-Semitic. And that's something that carried with him throughout his entire life, was this tinge of anti-Semitism. And this is, and all of this going on, 1914, he marries Vivian Haig Wood. How do I put it? She was sickly and depressive and wildly intelligent, and but it took too much of his time and passion, and it was a very awkward relationship. And I believe there was a movie that was out fairly recently, Tom and Viv, I think was the name of it. And I think that was probably a very good representation of what was going on at the time. But you know, she suffered from fatigue and insomnia and migraines and woman's issues, and she had an awful hard, awful difficulty with depression, and she was very unstable. And this really brought all of his, it brought his writings to a different world than what he was initially wanting to do, I guess. And it was a really markedly unhappy marriage, although he loved her dearly. I don't know what came out of that. I don't know if Wasteland came out of that marriage, or there were a couple of really big pieces that came out of that marriage. Like I said, I don't have my notes in front of me. Yes, she had been committed several times. Yeah. And if under English law, it's very difficult to divorce at that time. And there were only two ways that you could do that: through rabid infidelity, and if you were insane. And he was able to be granted a divorce because she was considered terminally insane. So anyways, so he leaves Merton. He teaches at Highgate School, at the Royal Grammar School. And this is where he meets a very exclusive moneyed group of people, the Lloyds and the Fabers, who are not only financing at that particular point in time some of the best jewels of the world, but also some of the best writers. And they put together one of the most exclusive publishing houses at that particular point in time. And this is where he's able to really put all of his energy to work. And these are the people who also published James Joyce and believe it or not, William Faulkner. And these aren't shabby guys. And so now at that point in time, he was teaching French and Latin, and he loved the idea of teaching and inspiring the youth to do the same thing. And again, following this moral code that he had, Martha pointed out the sharpness of dance and cocktails and smoking and so on and so forth, the social ills. And that follows throughout his entire works in his life. Geoffrey Faber and Charles Wimley, they get together and they really put him together, and this is at the same point in time where he's deciding to convert to Anglicanism. and become very serious about it. And I believe he, at this point in time, he denounced his American citizenship and became a Brit. And at that point, he identified himself as an Anglo-Catholic. And this is really where you see the classist, royalist politics in his writing just blossom. And this is where you start to see the Americans critique him, critique his conversion, and critique his conversion through writing. I mean, the New York Critical Magazine, which was developed just to critique T.S. Eliot's work, which of course, lasted for about 15 years and the paper went defunct. But it was interesting that New York was rapidly pushing against him. Remember, at the point in time, we had 5 or 6 different schools going on. Modernist schools. We had the San Francisco School. We had the New York School, largely led by the Algonquin Round Table. We had the Paris School. We had this London School that was charged and led predominantly by T.S. Eliot and a handful of other individuals like Joyce and Wyndham Lewis. But it was and they were all different, and they were all yet the same in reference to what they were viewing. So now we're at the middle of his life, and I believe Peter has a couple of great ads, and after that we're going to take a quick break.
Thank you, Ian. Is there a way I can move this? Thank you. It's very enlightening. What always fascinated me about T.S. Eliot is his inner contradictions. Here's a young man from St. Louis, a pioneer, from a Puritan family, who becomes the most unorthodox poet, debunking classics like Shelley and Wordsworth. He called Wordsworth an old sheep. He accused Shelley of being sentimental and adolescent, who was immoral. In his private life, he had no room for immorality. He was quite orthodox, and as you'll see in this poem, Prufrock, very awkward in love, very awkward, I think, with his sexuality. So we have someone who lives a life of the mind in this rarefied world of the imagination, so much so that surfacing is painful to him. The conventions of this Anglophile pretend world, although he really was an Anglophile, and was mimicking them to the point of affectation, to the point of imitating their accent, which I will attempt to do when I read Prufrock. But even the title, Love Song, is so lyrical. The name J. Alfred Prufrock may as well be Thomas Stearns Eliot, is so prosaic and sounds like a captain of industry more than a lyric poet. So we have in this poem his attempts and his inadequacies as a human being, trying to relate, especially with the opposite sex. When he's in the middle of some great enterprise of creativity that possesses him, he feels like a crab crawling on the silent floors of the seas. But already at age 27 is when he published this in 1915, and the magazine Poetry out of Chicago was already worried about how his hair is growing thin. And in this poem, he faces the end of pretend, that he is not, he will never be Prince Hamlet. He will, no matter how affectatious he is in speech, because he doesn't say Michelangelo, he says Michelangelo. Let me begin the love song of Jailford Prufrock, about 3 pages. Let us go, then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels, and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells, streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. In the room the women come and go and talk of Michelangelo. The yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue in the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains, let it fall upon its back, the soup that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fell asleep. And indeed there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions, and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. In the room the women come and go and talk of Michelangelo, and indeed there will be time to wonder, do I dare and do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair with a bald spot in the middle of my hair. They will say how his hair is growing thin, my morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to the chin, my necktie rich and modest but asserted by a simple pin. They will say but how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe? In a minute there is time for decisions and revisions which a minute will reverse. For I have known them all already, known them all. Have known the evenings, mornings, afternoons. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. I know the voices dying with a dying fall beneath the music from a farther room, so how should I presume? And I have known the eyes already, known them all. The eyes that fix you in a formulated phrase, and when I'm formulated, sprawling on a pin, when I'm pinned and wriggling on the wall, then how should I begin to spit out all the butt ends of my days and ways, and how should I presume? And I have known the arms already, known them all, arms that are braceleted and white and bare, but in the lamplight down with light brown hair. Is it perfume from a dress that makes me so digress, arms that lie along a table or wrap about a shawl? And how should then I presume, how should I begin? Shall I say, I have gone at dusk through narrow streets and watched the smoke that rises from the pipes of lonely men in shirt sleeves leaning out of windows? I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. And the afternoon, the evening sleeps so peacefully, smoothed by long fingers, asleep, tired, or it malingers, stretched on the floor here beside you and me, should I, after tea and cakes and ices, have the strength to force the moment to its crisis. But though I wept and fasted and wept and prayed, though I have seen my head grown slightly bald, brought in upon a platter, I'm no prophet, and here's no great matter. I've seen the moment of my greatness flicker, and I've seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker, and in short, I was afraid. And would it have been worthwhile, after all, after the cups, the marmalade, the tea, among the porcelain, among some talk of you and me, would it have been worthwhile to have bitten off the matter with a smile, to have squeezed the universe into a ball, to roll it toward some overwhelming question, to say, I am Lazarus, come from the dead, come back to tell you all. I shall tell you all, if one, settling a pillow by your head, should say, That is not what I meant at all. That is not it at all. And would it have been worth it after all? Would it have been worthwhile after the sunsets and the dooryards and the sprinkled streets, after the novels, after the teacups, after the skirts that trail along the floor, and this and so much more? It is impossible to say just what I mean, but as if a magic lantern through the nerves and patterns on a screen, would it have been worthwhile if one settling a pillow or throwing off a shawl and turning toward the window should say, that is not it at all, that is not what I meant at all. No, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. Am an attendant lord, one that will do to swell a progress, start a scene or two, advise the prince, no doubt an easy tool, deferential, glad to be of use, politic, cautious, and meticulous, full of high sentence, but a bit obtuse, at times indeed almost ridiculous, at times indeed the fool. I grow old, I grow old. I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Shall I part my hair behind? Do I dare to eat a peach? I shall wear white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. I have heard the mermaids singing each to each. I do not think they will sing to me. I've seen them riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown black. When the wind blows the water white and black, we have lingered in the chambers of the sea by sea girls wreathed with seaweed red and brown till human voices wake us and we drown. So, let that out.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, we're going to have our little break here, 10 or 15 minutes. I'd like to first go back and do some politicking. I'd like to first thank Neptune Grill for hosting us. Thank the Ink Tank and the Blueberry Patch for allowing this to happen. And we'll be back in 15 minutes.
And Michael has rum cake as a treat.
Oh, and Michael has rum cake.
Tijan, this dream's where you belong. Your golden journey now has just begun. With your mother's arms to hold you, your brother's light to guide, your quest for wisdom will not be denied. Tijan, you've sought the truth so long, but the key to that